my name is Christin Smith-Myers, and I'm very, very happy to be here and very grateful to Sisters U for being connected in a lot of ways. And many of you have supported me. A couple of you even came up tonight and said, oh, I love reading your blog posts. Thank you, because sometimes I'm like, no one reads them, what's the point? And then you know that one thing, and we talked about it just when we were going through the questions here. You know, you don't know sometimes what you do, a little spark of what you do that impacts somebody maybe even years later. And so we can all be that for other people. And I think when we are in dark times, which some people would categorize, sometimes you're in a dark season of your own life, or sometimes we can be a little concerned about the state of the country, you know, all those different things that people are concerned about. Australia's on fire. You know, there's always bad news, but what do we do with that? So let's talk about positivity. What is positivity? Karen asked this question, but I'm going to ask again. What is positivity? What do you think?
A mindset.
It is a mindset. You're right. And what kind of mindset? You got it. Did you have it? You were absolutely right. What else? Anything else?
Negativity, to me, it's opposite of negativity.
Yeah, absolutely, right? And we can all define negativity, right? Negativity, let's say, is looking for the bad in a situation or always finding it. Do we know those people who find the bad in every single situation? I won the lottery. Now what a pain. I got to pay those taxes. I mean, really, you feel like, have you ever been that person? I've been that person. There's been times in my life when I've absolutely been that person. Positivity is simply the practice of being or tendency to be positive or optimistic in attitude. So sometimes people talk about this and they say looking on the bright side, right? Finding the good in a situation, the glass half full. Does it mean smiling no matter what? It doesn't. Does it mean pretending everything's great even if it isn't? It doesn't. We're not talking about the fake stuff, okay? We're talking about genuinely working on being happier in our own lives, while still acknowledging when there's difficult times. I think that's an important distinction, because for me, as a person who's sort of positioned myself as a speaker at the intersection of positivity and productivity, when I speak to organizations, businesses, I talk about that connection a lot. And hey, imagine that. When you treat your employees better, they work harder. Huh? Can you imagine, right? We forget that. Sometimes we forget that even if we're the bosses, right? And we need that reminder. But it's important that we consider the fact that we have those, we have the power, we have the ability, and it's the way we look at the world. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, the things that are in our own control in finding the positive in circumstances, but that does not mean pretending that nothing is wrong. So I want you to, are you with me on that? All right, because what I was about to say is I can get worried sometimes that people think, oh, I'm just the lady with the smiley faces. Oh, she's happy all the time. I'm not happy all the time. Some of you I text with, you know I'm not happy all the time, right? I mean, nobody is. Anybody who's happy all the time is making it up. That's my opinion. Now, you can have, however, an orientation towards happiness, and those people are good to be around. And that was one of the questions we talked about. We'll talk about it a little bit more. Why does positivity matter? Especially with all the negative things that are happening. You know, why is it important? What do you think? Anybody? Go ahead.
I would say even health. They say that if you're positive, you actually live longer, you're healthier, just overall.
That's right.
Which is positive.
You do. You live longer, you're healthier. We'll talk about that a little bit more. You make more money. Relationships tend to work out better. You know, a lot of things, people who are happier first. So often we think that, well, once I'm successful, I'll be happier. No. When you're happier, you'll be more successful. That's a really huge mindset shift, because so often we think, okay, well, when I get married, sometimes it's when I get divorced. All right, then I'll be happy, right? When I have kids, oh, I'm glad I don't have kids. When the kids leave the house, when the kids, whatever it happens, whatever our circumstances are, when I get the new job. Guess what? If you're miserable in your current job, there's a reasonable chance you may be miserable in the next one. Now, you could be in the wrong place and need to find a better one, but the place doesn't make you who you are. You make you who you are. And that's a really important piece for us to consider. A lot of times we don't want to admit that. It is so much easier to blame other people. That dang Donald Trump, that dang Nancy Pelosi, right? Whatever side you're on, it's easier to find someone to blame. The school board, the mayor, you know, whatever it might be, the organization, the clients, the family members, the spouses, the children, the parents. It's really easy for us to kind of point that, but we need to think about what we can do for ourselves. So health, absolutely. There's a lot of factors there. What else? Why else would it be good to be positive?
It's too depressing to be negative.
Well, it is, right? And when there are...
It makes it too difficult. How about that?
Yeah,
it's just
it
too
is.
hard not to be positive. It makes it so difficult.
It does, but it's actually kind of easy for some people to go to the negative. It takes more work to be lighter, sometimes and to find it. And some people really struggle, especially when either you're going through a personal circumstance, right? It can be hard to find the positive, going through a personally challenging time, which everyone in this room has done, and some of you are going through right now. But also, when you think about it, if you agree with me that, let's say some people would say our country is in a difficult position right now, and how could we be positive? How could we focus on happiness? Well, the only way we're going to heal these problems, right, is if we can be a light in dark places. That's what I believe. And I think that a lot of you that I've met, you tend to have that orientation as well, or make that attempt every day. And every day we get a new chance. So I'm getting a little philosophical here, but I want to share with you, these are the 2 slides that have the most text. You are welcome to take pictures. I did not make a handout because it's more fun to not have to do work, but you have note cards there in case you want to take notes on anything, and they're fun color. Some people I know put them up on their fridge, then the things that they want to remember. So positive emotions flood our brains with dopamine and serotonin, which are chemicals that make us feel good and make our brains function at higher levels. So yes, it makes our health better to be more positive, but we actually are smarter. So when I present this in workplaces, I try to help supervisors understand that when you're creating a positive environment, you work better. How many of you work in maybe a traditional type of setting where you have, a lunch break or a lunch time in the middle of your day? You might have that circumstance. Do you sit at your desk instead of actually going and eating with other people, things like that? Have any of you done that? Especially if you have a lot of work, right? Okay, Michelle is there at her house all day long, right? Okay. Sometimes, or wherever she might be placed that day, right? And sitting there. But when you've got a problem, I used to do that. Oh, I can't take lunch. I got to just work. I'm going to eat my salad while I get angry at my computer, right? If you walk away and take a break, you come back with a whole new perspective. If you do something positive, if you connect with someone. So at my last job, it was a pretty negative environment, but man, Chipotle was the answer. And I will tell you, right? Am I right? Right? You get one of those bowls, it makes everything better, especially if you take a friend with you. So I would find somebody, be like, please, let's go to Chipotle. And then it would be better, and I would have a better attitude for the afternoon. But this also allows us to think more quickly and creatively, become more skilled at complex analysis and problem solving, and see and invent new ways of doing things. Would you like to have access to any of this? Yeah, so smile first. Don't think, well, I won't be happy till this project is over or till this difficult thing. No, put yourself in a better framework and frame of mind, and you'll be better at doing those things. It's kind of cool when you think about it, that you have that control. You were talking about you put music on, right? When you're working. Why?
It lifts the mood of everyone there, and we all take turns, and it's kind of like what we're feeling that day, and it's generally positive, upbeat music accompanied by some pretty awful dance moves. But,
right. Yes.
But no, it's fun, and I don't know, it just keeps us moving in in a positive way.
Yes.
Even if I know that I have to chop 100 pounds of potatoes, and they're
Yes.
just sitting there. But if I've got a little
right, groove in your step, right? You can.
It's really not.
It puts you in a better mood.
And not as daunting.
Yeah. How many of you have a song or 2 or 3 or 7 or 10 or a playlist or something that puts you in that different mood? You might have one when you need to be sad. You might have one you want to be happy.
Yeah, my daughter works for us on Thursdays and Saturdays. And she actually made a Nourish playlist.
Nice.
That she
Yes.
plays when she brings to work. She's like, Mom, this music, it just goes with this place, and it makes me. I'm like,
Yeah.
have at it. As long as it doesn't
Exactly.
have bad words, you can play.
Right. You put the explicit filter on and you let it
Exactly.
rip. Today in our office, we played the Dirty Dancing soundtrack. I am not kidding. And I was like, if you need a social media post, you can go ahead and take a picture from the back of your COO sitting at her desk singing along to every song. Like, I haven't heard these songs in 20 years, but I know every word. So that type of thing is how you create that mood, and then you're in a better position to get the work done, let's say. So I've got a picture for you here. That little guy is my son Evan a few years ago, but this is my nephew Benji. And when I first developed this program, it was about 2.5 years ago, I think, for a law firm. I was creating this presentation and pulling all the research that I've done for a long, long time. I've read a lot of the books. You were talking about the different books that have had an influence on your life. And I've read a lot of those things. And I was walking through this presentation on my computer in the office with my sister-in-law, Rebecca. And we were sitting there, I was flipping through the slides. Oh, does this work? Am I explaining this correctly? And the boys were in and out. They play, they get along really, really, really well. A few weeks later, they were running into a problem, and Rebecca was saying something about, well, let's think it through, let's put ourselves in a positive mindset. And Benji said, oh yeah, it's like Aunt Christin said, being happy makes our brains work better. If you learn nothing else tonight, I hope that's what you learn. Imagine if we could teach our kids right? It makes a difference. Any of you happen to be elementary school teachers or parents? If you are, or if you have been through that road, you know, you have PSSAs. What do they do before PSSAs? They pep the kids up, right? They give them pep talks. They make silly videos sometimes. You're allowed to chew gum on those days that you're not allowed to chew. You have candy. Why do they do that? Because being happy makes your brains work better. Wouldn't it be nice if we did that every day? Not that you need candy every day, but we'll get to that. So here's another interesting fact. Doctors who were primed for positivity in a particular study came to the correct diagnosis nearly twice as fast with less anchoring. And anchoring is when they're, you know, kind of locked in immediately to something that is an incorrect diagnosis. Now, if you were doing a study, I don't know, any sociologists in here? It would be a fun career if I ever have another career. But if you were doing that study, what would it take for you, do you think, to prime a doctor for positivity? What kind of thing would you need to give a doctor that would put him or her in a positive mood? Puppies work for a lot of people. I would agree with that. Any other guesses?
Be on time.
Money? Right, be on time for your appointment. Yes. They're like, we're in a great mood now. It actually was lollipops. In the study, that is the only thing that they gave them to prime them for positivity. And the group that got the lollipops, here's the lollipop getters over here, right? Came to the correct diagnosis faster and with less anchoring than the non-lollipops. The good news is today, you're all getting lollipops. So it turns out, if you could pass some of these that way, pick, yes. So the way I look at it is dum-dums can make you smart. So this is a good reminder. Help yourself, pass them around. Yeah. So I don't know that they were dum-dums in the study, but it's fun. It's fun as a reminder. Oh look, see, you cannot get a dum-dum and not put it in your mouth right away. It's so fun. If I do this talk at 9 in the morning, people are sucking on dum-dums. It's so fun. Yes, you absolutely can, of course. Someone gives you a lollipop, you eat it. And if you don't want one, you can keep. All right, so this next slide goes along. I know. I see. I could just stop. All right, I'm done. Karen, bye. I'm going back home. Everyone's in a better mood because I gave you a 5-cent lollipop. But it's nice to get a little something, isn't it? I have somebody. So I learned that in the book called The Happiness Advantage. And when I read that book, which is written by Shawn Achor, who created Harvard's happiness. I forget what the name of the course was, but the course on happiness, which was the most enrolled course at Harvard several years ago. And now they do them a lot of places. Happiness Lab comes out of Stanford, I think, if you listen to that podcast. There's a lot of great resources, and I'll share some in a little bit. But I had a coworker or a colleague that I told about this, and his boss had a tendency to be really nasty to customers. So if they were going to have an in-face meeting, Travis would be like, let's put out a candy bowl right in the middle, just to put everybody in a little bit of a better mood, whatever it takes. Right? If that's all it takes, I can do that. To exactly your point earlier, you know, happier people had fewer symptoms when injected with a cold. Now, I don't think I would sign up for that study, but you probably have some proof of that in your own life. When you're in a better mindset, like I live with 3 other people and I'm like, oh no, I'm not going down with you people. Like I'm going to stay positive. But if I've been, you know, sometimes that does have a big difference. It impacts your immune system. So that's pretty significant. And along the lines of germs and contagiousness, positive emotions are contagious. Do you agree? How do we know that's true? Who feels better since they walked in here? Right? We raised the vibration, we raised the energy, we shared positivity together. And guess what? The inverse of this is true. Right? Even more so. So usually when I give this talk, somebody's like, you know who really needs to come? Right? Did you do that already? Okay, perfect. Yes, I know. I need to do some sort of like couples, I need some sort of couples program. Yeah. Bring the most negative person in your room. Yeah, exactly. But we know that those are contagious. So you wrote down earlier some people, well, I forget exactly what the question was, but I said to Trina, I said, this is exactly what I would have asked during my program. Who do you catch positive emotions from? Think about those people. And what I would say is, if they don't know that you're on that they're on that list for you, tell them. Tell them, hey, I was at a speech tonight and she asked us to think about people who were positive and you came to mind. Thank you for being positive. Because the reality is we need those people. And I would bet many of us have been that for some other people, but we need it from other people too. And those positive emotions are absolutely contagious. So if we think sometimes it's really hard for us to put let's say, self-care first or our own happiness first, people think, well, why would I spend time? I've got too many other people to take care of. You know, I can't spend time doing extra things that make me happy. You know, that's kind of being selfish. Well, guess what? You can't make someone else happy, but positive emotions are contagious. So if you want the other people in your life to be happier, don't work on them, work on you. Because the impact is very significant. So I'd encourage you to think about that. So we have some really good ideas, and there's many more. You'll read articles all the time, right? Especially at the beginning of the new year. But any magazine, just in the grocery store, you could either read about the royal family, or you can, read another article that says how to be happier this year. And they probably share some really good tips. So we have some questions about how can we increase positivity. So that's what we're going to spend our time on tonight.
Sorry. I don't know why the phone's ringing.
Oh, is that you phone?
Sorry, I don't know.
We should answer. See who it is. Speakerphone. Hello. All together. Sisters, you, per diem. All right, so we're going to talk about some specific strategies to increase positivity. So if you are a note taker, this may be a time that you'd want to pick your color for your note card. But we're going to talk about some different strategies. So the first one is identify what and who makes you happy. Because there are some people who cannot answer this question. In some cases, because they're naturally inclined to not be very happy. In other cases, because it's just been so long since they thought about their own happiness and their own life. So a strategy to consider is identify, like you just talked about some people, right, where positive emotions are contagious. So some people we might catch positive emotions from. But what are some things that make you happy? So this is from, I have a board on my door. It's one of those sticky chalkboard type of boards. So here's my list. And this is just one day when I was brainstorming, but a card from a friend, a great pen, a dance party, right? Reese's peanut butter cups, being remembered, finding the perfect gift, cozy socks, an empty inbox, facilitating a positivity program. This is my happy place. Being able to do that. What are some things that make you happy? Call them out. Coming to Sisters U. Shoes, okay, got it. We have some good ones in this room, for sure. What else?
Having dinner with a friend or lunch.
Yep, connecting, dinner with a friend. What else?
Hilton Head.
Hilton Head, the beach, yep.
The beach.
For a lot of people, it's places.
Sunflowers,
Sunflowers. Flowers are good.
breezy spring day. Sunshine.
Yep, sunshine, absolutely. Sheets on the line, I like that. Somebody said puppies before, right? A lot of people will talk about animals. First, here's something to think about. Some of the items that some of you have described don't really bring a lot of joy to other people. Joy and happiness is very individualistic. So there are some strategies today that we'll talk about that are like proven strategies to increase happiness. But if it doesn't work for you, let it go. There's plenty of others. So for example, puppies, like I'm not a pet person. Now it's hard to see a puppy and not smile, but I could be that person because if they're getting like, I'm wearing black pants. I don't want hair on my legs. So, there's different things. Some people, a trip to the beach is their best day, right? Their best life. Others, my dad used to go on the beach with like socks pulled up to here, the sneakers on, the hat, newspaper, like where's the, I'm going to sit on the boardwalk over here, like that type of thing. Like that was the kind of beach family that I grew up in. It's also why I don't like pets, because my dad, we're going to blame him for that. But I learned a lot of other good things about that. But think about what makes you happy. And sometimes people write down things that make you happy. Like how many people might say, oh, happiness is a great book. Anybody like to read in here? Do you read as much as you'd like? Why not? You can say no time, you could do it. But some people who say that are the same people who post 5 times a day on social media. Get off social media and read. Now that's a very oversimplified way of looking at it, but when you take time to think about what makes you happy, I know people are like, I love to play tennis. Like when was the last time you played tennis? Like, 2007? Okay, that was 13 years ago. What can you change in your schedule to be able to play tennis? So the second strategy is spend more time doing what makes you happy with people who make you happy, because we forget. We go through life, and all of a sudden we're saying things like, I can't believe it's 2020 already. And did you enjoy it? Because there's joy to be had. And so thinking about that makes a big difference. So I'd encourage you to think about ways you can spend more time, even on your drive home tonight. Now, you may not have a drive as long as I do, but on your drive home, what's one thing you could do differently tomorrow that would make you happier? And do you need to substitute something else? For me, it's like political conversations. I've just told my husband, I'm not having them anymore. Like, we're not solving anything and we're on the same side. So really, this is not a great use of time. Let's do something else. I've been reading a lot of books. Because, you know, go ahead, you talk about whatever you want. You argue with the iPad, that's fine. I'm not going to do that. This is an interesting concept. You know, I'm not a researcher, but I've read a lot about happiness. And this is really how much of your happiness falls into each of these categories. How much is influenced by circumstance, genetics, and intentional activity. So if there's anybody who wants to take a guess, so you got a 50% portion, a 40%, and a 10%. What do you think? Any guesses?
50, I would say intentional activity.
Okay. 10% genetics, you're saying?
Is only 10.
Okay. Anybody else? Interesting. I like where you're headed with a big percentage being intentional activity. Actually, genetics is 50%. Now, what that means is you have a genetic set point, right? There's a certain amount, and that's not like nature versus nurture. That's the nature part, right? So that is a genetic set point. But it's only 10% circumstance. And that's hard to believe sometimes because we think, again, when we get past this problem, we'll be happier, right? Or if only I didn't have this, or if my family was different, or if I had these different circumstances. But it's 10%. And the way you know that is think about, you know, we've heard about these people like lottery winners, right? And they win the lottery, which is a dream come true, and a few years later, their happiness is exactly the same level as it was, whether they spent all the money or whether they still have it. So if you want to win the lottery, what you really want to do is first work on getting yourself happier, then win, because then even after, you know, several years later, you're still going to be really happy. We know people who've gone through really difficult circumstances, right? Really difficult circumstances that seem like they should be 90% of their picture, and they're not. They're still standing. They're still sitting in this room. So this is a pretty powerful thought. And obviously tonight, what we're focusing on is intentional activities. I can't change that. I can help you with some stuff to help you change this, and we're responsible for changing our own circumstances sometimes when we can. But intentional activity, that's a whole big portion that we can control. And we've already given several examples of how you can change activities to create your own happiness. But just remembering that we have that power and that ability, even if it doesn't feel natural to us, there's plenty that we can learn from that. So here's another one I like. Smiling tricks your brain into thinking you're happy, producing neurochemicals that actually make you happy, right? So sometimes that fake it till you make it. So we're going to try it. All right, on the count of 3, you're going to smile. 1, 2, 3. I'll time you. We can smile, right? Smiling actually takes those muscles and tricks your brain, right? Just like, why does this work? Well, any of you like sports? If you like sports, okay, some of you don't, all right, fine. But there are those of you who do, right? Maybe you don't like them. Maybe you don't like them, but you see them anyway, right? You watch them anyway, whether it's your own children or whether it's professionals or whatever it might be. You ever watch somebody get injured? Do you feel it in that exact, oh, you can feel that. You know, if a pitcher takes a hit right back, you know, and it hits the pitcher, you can feel that. That's the whole thing. Why does virtual reality work, right? Your brain doesn't know the difference sometimes between real and what is fake. So you can smile, particularly when you don't feel happy. Now, for a little while, you're going to look a little ridiculous, perhaps, and it would be silly if you walked around, but try it at the grocery store, because not many people are happy at the grocery store. So if you can just smile in that particular circumstance, but when you start smiling, you start to feel better. Just like when you turn on the music, even though you don't feel like dancing, or when you let your body move a little bit, even when you don't feel like it, or when you say, okay, I'm going to go for that walk, and I'm only going to make myself walk for 5 minutes, but once you get started, it's easier. So I am going to encourage you to smile. Okay? Yes?
I know this is like ridiculous, but so I wake up constantly at night, like all the time. So I train myself to just like wake up, look at the clock, and then smile as I go to bed. And I just swear to God, it like puts me back to sleep.
Thank you,
Rather than, like,
Sherry.
being annoyed.
Yes, that's right.
I'm annoyed. I'm like, oh, it's like 2 o'clock, or like, you know, I just can't fall back asleep. So I was just telling, this is like, it's so
Yeah.
embarrassed to even say this, but like, I just taught my daughter this. I'm like, listen, when if you wake up and you're tossing and turning, something I'm doing, and it's funny that you said this, is I'm just smiling as I go back to bed. And it's like tricking my brain that it's okay.
I love it. Because what is getting angry going to do? It's going to rile you up more so that you can't get to sleep. And then next thing you know, you're keeping score. And when we're doing alarm clock math and when we're keeping score, that's a bad sign. You know, right? Anytime you're doing that, like, I haven't had a performance review in 7 years and 2 months and 3 days, and when you're keeping score that way, you're focusing probably on the wrong thing. We're like, I only got 3 hours and 19 minutes of sleep, right? Like, we're tempted to do that, and like, my commute was so long, whatever it might be, but that's probably a sign. And so if we can find a way to smile through that, I love that. Thank you. Can I share that again when I give this talk? That's great. Exactly. Smile yourself back to sleep.
Smile royalty.
I see the book. I see the book, like smile yourself to sleep, right? I love it.
Millions of women with that idea.
Exactly. So I heard some of this when you were talking about your, what do we call the session that we just did beforehand? Not
Breakout?
Yeah, the focus on you. During the focus on you, I heard some people talking about great gratitude, right? Being thankful. Consistently grateful people are more energetic and emotionally intelligent. So even if it's getting up and saying, okay, well, at least I slept a little bit. I'm grateful for that, or I'm grateful I don't have to get up early tomorrow, or whatever it might be. But consistently grateful people, and I think there are some of them in this room. And gratitude can take all different forms. So there are some people who might keep a gratitude journal. Have any of you done that before? Yep, I've done that, right? A lot of people do that. Interestingly, they say the best way to do a gratitude journal is actually not to do it every day, because you kind of can get rote and get it a little bit stuck. If you do it once a week, it's scientifically more powerful. If you like doing it every day and you have that discipline, I say do it. But it is interesting to see the impact of gratitude. Right? Trina, you were saying that you got a note today from somebody you had an impact on previously, and how great it is to have someone express their gratitude to you. So sometimes it takes the form of a note. Sometimes it takes the form of a text, right? Just sending a message to someone and saying something that you're grateful for. And if it's in the workplace, what I would suggest to you is that it's particularly helpful when your gratitude is very specific. Because when you're specific, you're reinforcing the behavior that you want to see, or with your kids. Right? So I have a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old. So I can either say, why does the bathroom floor have all your stuff on it? Or I could say, thank you for hanging up your towel. And then leave out the part of, next time pick up all the clothes too, right? But I mean, you have the opportunity to focus on what you're grateful for and then reinforce those particular behaviors. So what are some ways you like to express gratitude? Any ideas that we haven't talked about? Gratitude journal? Anything else? Thank you notes?
Flowers.
Yeah, flowers, a token gift, something small can really be a nice way to do that too. Some people talk about a threshold ritual. So for example, when you leave the house in the morning, saying something you're grateful for about home, and then when you come home from work, perhaps if you go to a workplace, something you're grateful for about your work day. That can be pretty powerful for people if they have that type of ritual. At dinner, if you have other people in your family, maybe what are you grateful for today? Because then you're creating that environment. If you see someone, I've written blog posts about, we're like, hi, how are you? How are you? Good, good, how are you? Okay, like that's kind of not that great. But if you say to someone like, hey, what's new and good with you? That's a way of focusing on the positive. Or the people who say, how are you? Oh, I'm grateful. What are you grateful for? Now, I used to know someone who every time you talk to her, hi, how are you? She'd go, perfect. I was like, oh, God, you're exhausting me, lady, And I appreciate where she was coming from, because she really had a really good sense of self-awareness and satisfaction in her life, and probably started meditating way before any of the rest of us did, but it was a little much. But it is really helpful to be grateful. So that is a strategy that I'd like to suggest to you. And if you need some help doing that, I have some thank you notes for everybody. So I'll start some down here if you'd like to pass those along. I'll let you guys try some. Here you go. I'll just leave those there if you would like to pick one. There's a couple different ones. And so please, help yourself. Yes, Karen.
I was going to say something, because I have a 16-year-old, and for those of you with teenagers, they can be fairly moody sometimes.
Yes.
You can never see this video. But every day...
Probably not the target demographic for this video either.
I say to him, how was your day? He says, good. Oh, what was good about it? Nothing bad happened.
Yeah, right.
So...
It's a low bar.
Yeah. So he and I have had some conversations. There's a lot going on in a 16-year-old life, because they're having to make a lot of plans. Life can be overwhelming, whatever. So you can easily get negative, and then the parents can be responding negative.
Yes.
So he and I made an agreement that we're going to be having a lot of these tough conversations, just by the very nature of where he is in his life. So we agreed that before we give each other, because he has to give me as much constructive criticism as I have to give him, frankly. So we just agreed that before we give each other constructive criticism, we'll start with, thank you for, or I noticed this, or I appreciate this, before we go into it. Because I told him, I felt like we were getting into a place of, this isn't working for me, and this isn't working for me. And to avoid going down that spiral, it's helped.
I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. That's very
Mindful
intentional.
of what is going right before we dig into
Yep.
the
Yep.
downward spiral.
And there will always be negatives. There will always be downsides. There will always be neutral things. But if we choose to focus, right, where we put our focus is what grows. So if we, at the end of the day, my husband and I used to play like whose workday was worse. Did you ever play that game? Oh, I see some of you. You wouldn't believe this, and that person didn't show up. Well, guess what my client did? What is the point of that? Especially, we actually kind of liked our job, but right, and you feel like, but it's kind of that same thing where you like, go together, right? And you spiral downward together, whether it's at each other, as you and your son might have been doing, or whether it's something like that. So if you can say, what was the best part of your day? Well, then you're putting your attention on. Or if you have a gratitude journal, you know, like one of the benefits of a gratitude journal is if you write at night, for example, all day long you're looking for things. When you train your brain to look for what's positive, you find it. But if not, like the default mode for most of us is towards a more negative side, or it's like that one complaint, like this teacher, you know, your child, you know, this teacher drove me crazy. Well, you had all these other teachers, you know, you had all these other experiences today. So kind of thinking about it from that perspective. If we split the room in half, which would be very easy to do in this particular room, said, tell me why today sucked, you could do it. Most of you could come up with some sort of proof. It may not be the way you're wired, but you could find something about your day that wasn't great. If I told you to think about what made your day great, you could do it, even if you had negative things. It's where you put your attention. So remembering that we have that choice. You had your hand raised. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say too, something to think about with feedback. You know, feedback is tough, right?
Yes.
So one way to have like a positive perspective on it is just feedback is information.
Yes.
It's not like you like you personally apply the judgment to it.
Yeah.
And that's coming from you. But the person who's giving you feedback is just giving you information. So, you know, just another like strategy to
I love
not
that.
get worked up over somebody giving you feedback that's not like glowing.
Right. And you don't have to respond right away. You don't have to change anything. So you could say, thank you for the feedback. I'm going to take it in.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a complete sentence. That's a complete thought. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So we did the thank you notes. Another strategy to consider is to modify your diet. And I don't mean about eating. There's other people in this room that can help you with that. But what are you taking in? What are you feeding yourself? Are you spending your time on social media? If so, is it the type of social media that uplifts you? Because there's a lot of that out there. Or is it the kind that doesn't, right? Do you have news on 24/7? Probably not a great idea, right? So thinking about what you're consuming, right? What you're reading, how are you spending your time? What are you listening to in your car, right? If you're somebody who's on KYW 24/7 or something like that, or if like, you know, somebody else left on sports talk radio, but you just didn't change it, like think about what you're consuming. So I have some ideas. The Happiness Advantage is the book I told you about on the bottom right. The How of Happiness is where I got a lot of the information that I share in my talks too. Joyful is a really fun book. I would love to do like whole workshops about that, and the surprising power of ordinary things to create extraordinary happiness, like circles, like, you know, the different ways that you design your space and things like that. Podcast I recommend is The Science of Happiness. I listen to Happier with Gretchen Rubin. There's a lot. Do you listen to? Yes. She's wonderful. And so there's a lot of different ways. You could all list probably way more. Somebody when I did the talk at Bucks County Community College was talking about the Shine app. They send a motivational, you know, message every day with a meditation or something along those lines. There's a lot of these. Now I want to be mindful of time because I'm supposed to be finished. So I did, but not that late. So, okay, but I just want to make you aware. If you ever want to share resources, let's do it. Let's fill the hive up with that type of stuff and really positive resources, because there's sometimes something hits you at just the right moment. I mentioned that I write a blog. I will have sign-up sheets. I'll just put them at the desk, maybe where Kim is sitting, in case you'd like to sign up. I send a newsletter twice a month, except when I'm on hiatus, which I have been, but I'll get my mojo back at some point. So that's this here. So let's talk about strategy number 6, commit conscious acts of kindness. So who here is into random acts of kindness? Right? They're fun. Oh yes, Steph, your talk, right? When you were the Sister of the Month, we were over here, we had, what's his name? When he was here, that just exuded that idea of kindness and giving. You don't give to feel better, but don't you always feel great when you give? Absolutely. We have a lot of givers in this room, right? Scientifically, they say that if it's a conscious act, like that's why I have that word in there, where it's not just afterwards like, oh yeah, I held the door for that lady and I did this, but it's actually going out of your way to do kind things. Doesn't have to be random, right? But it can be very conscious, a decision that you made. When we had, I think it was the first Best Foot Forward. Did that start in 2016 maybe? I remember, or maybe it was 2017 that I went. And I remember at Bucks County Community College, they had a board like this, where they had, it was up in one of the stairwells, and then there were cards that you could select. So then I made my own of this. Unfortunately, somebody borrowed it, it got ruined, so I don't have it with me tonight. But that idea, it's also really fun if you have young people in your life. If you need to do something fun, maybe you want to do something totally different for Valentine's Day, like go do nice things for other people. It's amazing the impact that you can have with just small little gestures, just fun little things. Like, look, everybody smiled when you got a lollipop. You know, I mean, you can do that. When I turned 40, it was right after the election in 2016. I was not in a great place about that, and I was like, I need to do something. I went to Philly Pretzel Factory and I bought 40 soft pretzels, and I drove down. I live in Boyertown, if you know where that is. I drove down Swamp Pike between Gilbertsville and Boyertown, and I went into business after business after business to give away pretzels, which is harder than it sounds. It was actually very stressful. I was sweating more for that than I am right now. But to be able to just walk in, and there were people, you would have thought I was handing out $50 bills. No joke. I went to a jeweler and like, there's people in the back. Do you have more? This is amazing. Why are you doing this? What are you selling? I'm like, I just think we could use a little positivity. That's all. It's a pretty cool thing to be able to do something. And that was kind of a gesture, like something that was symbolic for me. And I really probably ended up benefiting from that even more than those people. But some of those people absolutely went home and said, this lady came in with soft pretzels. Isn't that weird? That's all right. I'm okay with being the weird person in your day. I am A-okay with that. Positivity strategy number 7 I'd like you to consider is finding something to look forward to, right? Like, it's January. This is not always our best season, right? Some people are not real happy during this time. You know, you may be thinking about your beach vacation that you have scheduled. All right, that's good, but that's like 6 months away. Find something else sooner. So, Trina, you mentioned like getting together with friends, right? Scheduling those times. Getting out. I suffer very badly from seasonal affective disorder. So I'm using my daylight therapy lamp and I'm meditating. I'm doing all these things. We have our morning accountability group. I'm doing whatever I can. And I still feel like I'm going to fall in the pit half the time. So doing this has really helped me. Hey, there's some friends I haven't seen in a little while. I'm going to schedule that dinner. I'm going to follow up, you know, with those people, because what I really want to do is draw inward, but I know that I need to go out, and then I always feel better. Even I teased and I wrote it in that bio about driving, but it's over an hour. Do you know where Exton, Pennsylvania is, Chester County? There's no good way to get there from here. It's like not, it's just ridiculous. It's not a good trip. So like on a Thursday night getting here, but I'm always so glad that I came here. And it's just one of those things. And for you, it's something else perhaps, but having those things on the calendar to be able to look forward to. And then this is symbolic of the 8th strategy that I'm sharing with you tonight. And there's hundreds, but the 8th one I want to share with you is strengthening your relationships. If you read some of those studies about like who are the happiest countries in the world and things like that, what they have in common is social connection. That might be people within your own house, if there are any others, but that's far more than just that immediate circle. It may be connecting more with coworkers, getting more involved in your community, being part of a group like this. Like when I think about the joy that has come from connecting with people and getting to know people over time, and you just show up authentically, and when you can find people with whom you can do that, it is really a powerful thing. Karen, thank you for creating that. for us here. But there are those opportunities to, really strengthen relationships that you have. Is there a friend you've maybe fallen out of touch with? Is there a relative that you only see on Facebook but you might like to see in person? Is there somebody that you might want to write a good old-fashioned letter to? You have a thank you note here in front of you. Maybe that would be something. But the time that we put into strengthening our relationships is so good for our happiness. If you read any of those books, that's always like the last chapter. It's like the mega strategy is working on relationships and connecting with people, because at the end of the day, that can be a great source of our happiness and the happiness of other people. And being careful about who you align with. That's something that you'll want to consider. So we talked about a number of strategies here. I'll just ask for 3 volunteers. Tell me what's one of these here that you'd like to work on a little bit more, what you'll commit to doing differently having been here. Anybody? Karen?
Commit conscious acts of kindness.
Okay.
That one.
Got it. Thank you. Somebody else?
I think modify your diet and not food, what you take in.
Yeah, what you listen to, what you read. Go ahead, Steph.
I would say spend more time doing what makes me happy with people who make me happy. We used to hang out in the neighborhood and everybody would complain and everything. And I'd be like, you know what? I have so many friends that I would rather spend time with than neighbors who, like some of your neighbors are your friends, some of your neighbors are just your neighbors, So.
And it's like changing your default. Like that default, like that's easy, right? But when you actually do that, some of our neighbors. I know.
Silent message.
I know, exactly. She didn't say all the neighbors.
It just said the ones on my cul-de-sac.
Oh, okay, it's a very specific group of people.
True. Cul-de-sac is down farther.
Yes. But that's huge, right? Like choosing who you spend time with. I mean, if you have that girlfriend that every time you go out to lunch together, they complain about the service, they complain about the food, they complain, stop going to lunch with her. Like, there's the answer. And maybe it's lunch, or maybe those people you just don't spend as much time with. But there's only so much time we have. And so being able to choose that consciously. Was there some else?
My Instagram post was, attitudes are contagious, make yours worth catching.
Absolutely. That is exactly correct. So just a quick note for you, what if bad things happen? I would like to, somebody said where next week, same time, same place, or something like that. I'm going to record a video that I will then request to share on the Hive that kind of talks about what if bad things happen, because that is an important part of this. I'm all about practical positivity, not about sunshine and rainbows from everywhere. That's not always the reality. In 2013, when I shared my talk, I shared this quote. It's a little hard to read, but the only difference between stumbling blocks and stepping stones is how you use them. I still believe this. I've had it for 20 years. I had it, well, more than that, when I was in college. And it's very powerful. And that is a good way to think about how to stay positive when you're going through difficult circumstances. So my quote, and I think that Kim has quote cards for you, is it's a tribute. I was like I'm an ex-English major, so I was like, well, I don't want to say Abraham Lincoln, because when I Googled it, some people would say, there's no way he said that, but whatever. It's attributed to him. Most people are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. And I think a lot of what you shared tonight kind of proves that fact as well. So I would like to thank you for participating. I have smiley face pins for everybody. If you'd like them, I have plenty. I know, like, what kind of a job is this that I get to hand out lollipops and pins, right? Like, I've done something well in my life. I know, I want to be Oprah or Ellen someday and give away really big stuff, but this is okay. So I would like to thank you. If you think this is something you may want to bring to an organization that you're affiliated with, I have cards up here about me and would love to talk to you. So I'll turn it back over to Kim. Thanks, everybody.